Aloha sewing friends, welcome back to Aloha Sewing Company where the stitches are straight-ish and the fabric hoarding is totally justified. Today we're making the ultimate kids lounge set, perfect for running around the house or pretending they're still not in their pajamas at 2 p.m. Hey, no judgment. This project is super beginner friendly and you can sew this using a sewing machine or a serger. I'll show you how to do both. Comment Aloha below and I'll send you the printable pattern piece for this project, or you can click the link in the description box. Screenshot this page if you want to, but it's also in that PDF pattern. I want to go over what kind of fabric you're going to use for this project. You're going to use a soft, stretchy knit fabric for this. It can have a 2 or 4 way stretch, and what that means is when you stretch it like this from left to right, it has some stretch to it, not like your regular cotton woven fabric. If it stretches up and down, that's great, but it doesn't matter. You need it to stretch from left to right. That was a ribbed knit. This is a jersey knit. It's most commonly found, I feel like, along with the ribbed knit, but these turn out even better and they're easier to sew with. This is a cotton lycra or a cotton spandex. It's my favorite to use for the cuffs around the arms and the leg bands. It has a 4-way stretch and it's really comfortable. This one is my absolute favorite. It is called Double Brush Poly or DBP. I love it for babies, especially because I'm a mom of 4 and I used to be a pediatric nurse, and this fabric keeps babies warm, which is so important because they can't regulate their temperature quite well yet. This one is a really popular one for these bummy shorts because it is a bullet knit fabric and it has a slight stretch to the left and right and up and down. So these are the most commonly used. Make sure you screenshot this page or download the PDF below in the description box for this info. So let's go ahead and get started with our lounge shirt. Here are my fabric pieces all cut out. You have the front and the back of the shirt. You have the neckband, the waistband, and you have 2 armband cuffs. What you're going to do is get your fabric pieces and lay them with the pretty sides of the fabric together. So that means the pretty sides of your fabric should be kissing and you're looking at the wrong side of the fabric. Start by lining up the top shoulders and sides of both of your fabric pieces and pin or clip them exactly where I am here. Once you have them pinned or clipped, you're going to take it to your sewing machine or your serger and sew using a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance right where I am showing you here. If you are using a sewing machine, you can use your straight stitch for this part. I'm just going to use my serger so that way I close all these ends up, but that does not matter if you're using a sewing machine because knit fabric does not fray, so you don't have to worry about your seams. If you want to see it on a sewing machine, keep watching because later in this tutorial, I'll show you exactly how to sew with knit fabric on a sewing machine, and I will show you my mistakes as well as a beginner sewer and what not to do. So that way you don't make the same mistakes that I did. So make sure you keep watching until the end, and please like this video and subscribe. I make new sewing patterns and tutorials every single week so you can watch more just like this. Here are my ends all serged. Now I'm going to flip this right side out and smoothen out your seams. Now let's put this to the side, don't worry, we'll come back to it, and let's work on the bands. You should have cut out 4 different bands for your waist, your neck, and 2 armbands. They all sew exactly the same way. With the pretty sides of the fabric together, you are going to just sew a straight line across the short edge so that way you meet the 2 raw edges together. The pretty sides of your fabric are kissing with the wrong side facing you. Once you have it sewn, you're just going to open it up right at the seam, and then you want to get the bottom of the seam and the top of the seam and match them up together with the wrong side of your fabric together. So you want the pretty sides of the fabric on the outside. Once you have the seams matched up, pin or clip them in place. Then you want to find the opposite end of what you just pinned or clipped and do the same thing and pin or clip this as well. We are going to quarter this off into 4 sections that we are marking here. You do this so that way when we attach it to our shirt, it will match up and everything will lay nice and evenly the way it's supposed to around those whole areas. So now that you have the side seam and the adjacent piece marked, put those two pieces together and mark the left and right sides. You're going to do this with all 4 of your cuffs, quartering them off into 4 equal pieces. You attach all 4 of the bands exactly the same way. That's what makes this pattern so perfect, because it's easy to do. Get the top seam and the bottom seam of your shirt sleeve and match them together so that you find the mid-center piece. Make a little clip just big enough for you to see it, and do the same thing on both sides. This quarters it off into 4 pieces because you have those snips in the front and the back of the sleeve, as well as using the 2 side seams. Do the same thing with the bottom of your shirt and the top of your shirt. You just want to find the mid-center of the front and back pieces of your shirt, and we're using the side seams as the other guidelines. Now let's go ahead and find the seam of our neckband. You are going to match the seam raw edges up with the raw edges of the back of your shirt. The back of your shirt's the one that is slightly longer in the top. So match those 2 marking pieces together with the pretty sides of the fabric together. Now you're just going to meet the other 3 equal parts of these markings that we made with our pins, clips, or scissors, and match them up. Those are the only 4 pins or clips that you need, and you do this for your arms and for your waistband exactly the same way. Now we're going to sew all the way around using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And again, I'm using my serger. If you are using your sewing machine, use your zigzag stitch. This allows the fabric to stretch when your child is wearing it, and it's super important. So make sure all of your fabric layers are nice and matched up, and then you're going to go to your first pin or clip and take it out and hold it, and pull and stretch that fabric a little bit so that it all lays nice, even, and flat together. So I'm grabbing my clipped point, I'm pulling that fabric so that all the layers match up and are stretched out evenly, and then I continue to sew. Once I get to that point, I go to my next pin or clip, and I do the same thing all the way around. This is what is going to allow your neckband, your armband, and your waistbands to have that stretch, and for the fabric layers to lay nice and evenly on top of each other without it puckering up. My neckband here is sewn. Now I'm just going to flip it up so that way my seam is on the inside. If you want to top stitch all the way around, you can do that if you want to, so that way it stays nice and flat, but you don't absolutely have to do that. Now to show you one more time, as I mentioned before, the neckband, the armband, and the waistbands all go on exactly the same. Match your side seam on the bottom of your sleeve with the side seam that you made on this cuff. Pin or clip it in place with the pretty sides of the fabric together, and then match up the 4 marking points on both of your fabric pieces and sew all the way around. Again, if you're using your sewing machine, you use your zigzag stitch. This set is seriously such a staple in our house for lounge clothes or even pajamas. I have them in all different kind of fabric prints, and my children absolutely love them. And I love that they're sensory friendly. No elastic, no buttons, nothing to worry about. They're super beginner friendly. My 2- and 4-year-old boy and girl absolutely love them, and they basically live in these at home. Who would you sew this for? Is it for your child, for your grandbaby, a baby shower gift, for holiday pajamas? Comment below and tell me who you're sewing this for. So now we have all of our bands attached in the same way, super easy. Then you're just going to flip down your bands and smoothen them out, iron them flat if you need to. And if you want to top stitch around them, you can do that. But if you're using a sewing machine, make sure you're using your zigzag stitch or your sewing machine's stretch stitch. This was a super easy and very quick top. Now you are ready to start sewing the shorts. The magical part of this is they sew exactly the same way as your shirt. They have 3 bands and your main part for your bottom, and they all sew up exactly the same way as the armbands and all that on your shirt piece. So get your main fabric pieces and you're gonna lay them with the pretty sides of the fabric together, matching it up right along the sides. Pin or clip that in place, and then you're gonna take it to your sewing machine or your serger and sew a straight line using a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance. You're also going to sew that little curve across the bottom. Once you have that sewn like I have here, you're just going to flip them right side out. And just like we did before, you want to find the top mid-center points on the front and the back side. So I just make a small slit, just big enough for me to see it, so that way those are going to be quartered off just like before. For your waistband, you're gonna sew it just the same way, except fold it in half, meeting your raw edges, and then you're gonna fold it in half again, just like I did here. Then you're gonna go to your side raw edges and sew those. Once you've done that, flip it so that the pretty side of the fabric is on the outside and your band is still folded. So your seam should be here. And then you're just going to find the other side of that seam, pin or clip it, because we're going to quarter this off into 4 pieces like we did for the top. To attach the waistband, I like to get the seam of the band. You're gonna flip it around so that the fold is at the top and the raw edges are at the bottom. Your shorts, you should be looking at the waistband right here, just like mine. So now we are gonna match up the back of our shorts with the seam of our waistband. You want the raw edges of the top of your shorts and the raw edges of your waistband matching. Then you're gonna do this for the side seam on both sides and the front of your shorts. Now sew all the way around the top raw edges using your serger or your sewing machine zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch is what's going to allow it to stretch when you're putting it on or playing and all that. Do your leg cuffs exactly the same way. The only difference with your leg cuffs is the seam of my cuff I like to put with the inseam of my shorts. So start by matching those up like I'm doing here. Now let's go sew all the way around each one of these 3 cuffs raw edges. If you are using a sewing machine, go ahead and turn it to your machine's zigzag stitch. That is so important. Then you are going to start sewing by picking up one of your 4 quarters, pulling that fabric until it stretches flat together, making sure that all 3 layers of your fabric are always nice and together where the raw edges are at the top. And then sew using your zigzag stitch all the way around. Once you get to your next area that you have with your finger, where you pulled where that pin or clip was, you continue sewing until you get to the next one, and you repeat this process all the way around. If you don't pull that fabric while you're sewing so that it lays nice and flat together, your sewing will pucker up right here where your seam is. once you flip this right side out. So it's really important that you pull that fabric while you sew. Don't forget like I did, and I used a straight stitch and completely forgot, and then I can't stretch the waistband or the thighs, so I had to redo that. So drop a comment below. What's the funniest sewing mistake you've made lately? And if you made it this far, mahalo. Don't forget to like, subscribe, because I post more sewing tutorials like this every single week. Or you can click one of my videos here on the screen.